3 years ago, my manager looked me dead in the eye, in front of my entire team, during a meeting and said, "Honestly, I don't think you're smart enough for this job." I remember my face getting hot. I remember someone in the back of the room shifting in their chair because it was that uncomfortable. I didn't say anything. I just nodded and went back to my desk. Last month, I signed her termination paperwork. If you had told me back then that this would happen, I would have laughed at you. Not because it sounded exciting, but because at that point in my life, I couldn't even imagine surviving the week, let alone becoming her boss. So stick with me because this story isn't really about revenge. It's about what happens when someone tells you who you are, and you have to decide whether to believe them. My name doesn't matter right now. What matters is that this happened to me, in a regular office, in a regular American city, doing a regular job. And if you've ever been made to feel small by someone with more power than you, I think you're going to feel this one in your chest. Let's go back to the beginning. I grew up in a small town, the kind of place where everyone kind of knows your family's business whether you want them to or not. My parents worked hard. My dad drove a delivery truck for almost 30 years. My mom cleaned houses on the weekends to help cover bills. We weren't poor exactly, but there was never extra. You know that feeling when you go grocery shopping with your mom, and she's doing math in her head the whole time, putting things back on the shelf quietly so you don't notice? That was my childhood. I was the first person in my family to go to college. And I want to be honest with you, I wasn't some straight-A genius. I was an average student. I worked hard, but things didn't come easily to me. I had to read things twice. I had to study longer than my friends. I remember a teacher in high school once told my mom, in front of me, that I was not really college material. I was 15 years old when I heard that. You'd think that would have scared me off, but it actually did the opposite. Something in me got quiet and stubborn. I decided I was going to prove that woman wrong, even if it took me years. So I went to a community college first because that's what we could afford. 2 years there. Then I transferred to a 4-year university with a partial scholarship and a mountain of student loans that, honestly, still follow me around like a shadow today. I graduated with a business degree. I remember walking across that stage and looking for my parents in the crowd. My dad was crying. My mom was recording it on a shaky phone camera. That moment, for about 10 minutes, I felt like maybe I really could do anything. Then reality hit. I sent out over 100 job applications. 100. I got maybe 8 interviews. And most of those were for entry-level admin roles that paid barely above minimum wage. Finally, about 5 months after graduation, I got hired at a mid-sized insurance company. Nothing glamorous. I was a claims processing assistant, which basically meant I sat in a cubicle all day and handled paperwork nobody else wanted to touch. But I was grateful. I remember calling my mom from the parking lot after my first day, and just crying happy tears. I finally had a real job. I finally felt like all those years of studying meant something. That's where I want to be honest with you about something. That night, I sat in my car in the parking lot for almost 45 minutes before I could drive home. I called my mom, and I could barely get the words out. I told her what happened, and she just listened. And then she said something I'll never forget. She said, "Baby, one person's opinion of you is not a fact. It's just an opinion. And she doesn't get to write your story." I didn't fully believe her that night. I was too hurt to believe anything good about myself. But I held on to that sentence anyway, like a life raft I wasn't sure would actually float. You'd think that would be the low point. It wasn't. Over the following months, Denise's behavior didn't get better. It got worse. I think once she said something that harsh out loud, some invisible line got crossed for her, and she stopped holding back at all. She started giving me the most tedious, mind-numbing tasks in the department. Things far below what I was capable of. When I asked for more responsibility, she'd say things like, "Let's see how you handle what you have first." Even though I was handling it fine. She excluded me from meetings that were relevant to my role. I'd find out about important changes secondhand, from co-workers, instead of directly. When I brought it up, she said it was an oversight. But it kept happening. Over and over. At the same time, my personal life was falling apart a little too. This is the part one don't talk about much, but I think it's important, because struggle rarely comes from just one direction. My dad got sick that year. Nothing life-threatening, thank God, but it required surgery and a long recovery, and since my parents didn't have great insurance, a lot of the cost fell on me. I was already barely covering my own rent and student loan payments. Now I was sending money home too. I remember eating ramen noodles for almost 2 weeks straight, because I needed to save every dollar. I remember turning down invitations to hang out with friends because I couldn't afford it, and eventually people just stopped inviting me. I was exhausted all the time. Not just tired, exhausted in this deep, bone-level way. I'd get home from work and just lay on my couch, staring at the ceiling, too drained to even make dinner. And through all of this, I still had to walk into that office every single day and face Denise. I had to sit in meetings where she'd casually undermine me. I had to swallow comments that made me feel 2 inches tall. I started applying to other jobs, quietly at night, after work. But here's the thing nobody tells you about job hunting when you're already exhausted and beaten down. It's hard to sell yourself in an interview when you don't believe in yourself anymore. I bombed interview after interview. Not because I wasn't qualified, but because I'd walk in already convinced I wasn't good enough, and it showed. There was one night, I remember it vividly, where I sat on my bathroom floor. I don't even know why the floor, but that's where I ended up, and I just asked myself out loud, what is wrong with me? I want to pause here for a second, because I know some of you watching this might be in a similar place right now. Maybe not with a manager like Denise, but with someone in your life who's made you question your own worth. I need you to hear this. Struggling doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It means you're human, and you're carrying more than most people around you realize. I didn't know it yet, but I was about to hit the bottom before I found my way back up. The lowest point came about 1.5 years into the job. We had a huge client account that our department was responsible for. It was a big deal. Lots of visibility, lots of pressure. Denise assigned parts of the project to different team members, and she gave me a piece that honestly, looking back now, was set up to fail. Not enough time, unclear instructions, and no support when I asked for clarification. I did the best I could with what I had. But there was an error in the final numbers, a real one this time, not just a formatting issue. It wasn't catastrophic, but it caused a delay and needed to be corrected before the client noticed. Denise took this straight to upper management. Not to fix it together as a team, not to talk to me first. She went straight over my head and framed it like I had single-handedly jeopardized the account. I got called into a meeting with her and the department director. I sat there and explained what happened, that the timeline she gave me left no room for the review I normally would have done, that I had actually asked for more time and been told no. Denise just crossed her arms and said, "I don't remember that conversation happening." It was her word against mine. And she had 15 years of history at that company. I had 18 months. I didn't get fired, but I got put on a performance improvement plan. A PIP. If you've never had one, let me tell you, it feels like a countdown clock to unemployment. Every single day after that, I walked into work with this tight knot in my stomach, waiting for the moment they'd call me in and tell me it was over. That night, I sat in my apartment and just felt completely hollow. I remember thinking, maybe she's right. Maybe I'm just not cut out for this. Maybe that teacher back in high school was right too. Maybe I was never going to be good enough for any of it. I'm not going to pretend I had some dramatic breakdown moment in a movie sense. It was quieter than that. It was just this heavy, gray exhaustion that sat on my chest for days. I stopped answering texts from friends. I stopped taking care of myself the way I should have. I was honestly in survival mode. But something happened about a week later that started to shift things. And it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a lightning bolt moment. It was small, but it changed everything. My mom came to visit that weekend. She hadn't seen me in a couple months, and I think the second she looked at me, she knew something was wrong. I looked tired. I'd lost weight I didn't need to lose. I wasn't myself. We were sitting at my tiny kitchen table, and she asked me straight out, "What is going on with you?" I finally broke down and told her everything. The PAP, the meetings, what Denise had said in front of everyone, the months of feeling like I was drowning. My mom didn't say much while I talked. She just listened, the way she always does. But when I finished, she asked me a question that I still think about to this day. She said, "If your best friend told you this exact story about her job, what would you tell her to do?" I sat there for a second, and then I said, without even thinking, "I'd tell her to get out. I'd tell her that nobody should let someone treat them like that, and that she deserves so much better." My mom just nodded and said, "So why haven't you told yourself the same thing?" That question hit me differently than anything else had in the last 2 years, because she was right. I had been giving myself permission to accept treatment that I would never in a million years accept for someone I loved. That night after she left, I didn't sleep much. But for the first time in a long time, my mind wasn't spinning with anxiety. It was spinning with something else. Clarity, I guess you'd call it. I decided that weekend that I was going to do 3 things. First, I was going to finish out my performance improvement plan and prove, with facts and documentation, that I could do this job well. Not for Denise. For me. Second, I was going to start documenting everything. Every meeting, every comment, every instance where I was excluded or undermined. Quietly. Professionally. Just in case I needed it later. Third, and this was the big one, I was going to go back to school part-time. I had always wanted to get my MBA, but I talked myself out of it because of the cost, the time, the fear that I wasn't smart enough for a program like that. I decided I was done letting fear make my decisions. I applied to a part-time evening MBA program at a state university, the kind designed for working adults. I remember filling out the application at 11 p.m. on a work night, hands shaking a little, half expecting to get rejected. I got in. I want to be honest, going back to school while working full-time under a hostile manager and dealing with my dad's medical bills was one of the hardest stretches of my life. I was running on maybe 5 hours of sleep most nights. I did homework during my lunch breaks. I studied in my car in the office parking lot before my shift started. But something in me had shifted. I wasn't doing it to prove Denise wrong anymore. I was doing it to prove to myself that I hadn't been telling the truth about who I was. She had told me a story about myself, and for a while I believed it. Now I was writing a different one. Over the next several months, I completed my performance improvement plan. And I didn't just meet the goals, I exceeded almost every single one of them. I made sure every task was documented, every deadline was hit early, every report was triple-checked. Denise couldn't really argue with results. She still tried honestly. She'd find small, nitpicky things to criticize. But the big narrative she'd built, that I wasn't smart enough, that I wasn't capable, it started falling apart because the evidence didn't support it anymore. Around this time, I also started building relationships outside of my immediate team. I reached out to a director in a different department, someone I'd met briefly at a company event, and I asked if I could shadow her team for a project. She said yes. That project ended up showcasing skills Denise had never given me the chance to use. Slowly, people outside my department started to notice me. Not because I was trying to show off, I really wasn't. I was just finally being given room to actually do good work, without someone standing over my shoulder waiting for me to fail. I finished my MBA about 2 years later. I remember walking across that stage for the second time in my life, except this time, it felt different. The first graduation felt like hope. This one felt like proof. During that same period, I applied for an open position in a completely different department at the same company, a leadership role overseeing a small team. I almost didn't apply. That old voice in my head, the one that sounded suspiciously like Denise, kept whispering that I wasn't ready, that I'd embarrass myself. But I applied anyway. I interviewed. And I got the job. I want to pause here because I think this part matters. Leaving Denise's department wasn't some triumphant, cinematic exit. I didn't get to give a big speech. I just quietly transferred, thanked my old teammates who had been kind to me, and started fresh somewhere else in the same building. For the first time in almost 3 years, I walked into work and didn't feel that tight knot in my stomach. I didn't dread meetings. I actually started remembering what it felt like to enjoy my job. I wish I could tell you that once I left that department, everything became easy. It didn't. Leadership came with its own challenges. Learning how to manage people, learning how to give feedback the right way, the way Denise never did for me. I made mistakes. I had moments of self-doubt. But this time, the doubt didn't paralyze me the way it used to, because I finally had real evidence, real proof, that I was capable. Over the next couple of years, I worked hard. I mean, really worked hard. I took on projects nobody else wanted. I mentored newer employees the way I wished someone had mentored me. I made sure that if someone on my team made a mistake, I never, ever brought it up in front of others. I always did it privately, gently, the way that actually helps people grow instead of shrinking them. I got promoted again. And then again. About 3 years after I left Denise's department, a director position opened up, overseeing multiple teams, including, as it turned out, the original department I had started in. The same department Denise still worked in. I remember finding out I got the job. I sat in my car in the parking lot, just like that day years earlier when I cried after she humiliated me in that meeting. Except this time, I wasn't crying from pain. I was crying from something that felt like relief mixed with disbelief. When I walked into that department on my first day as director, Denise was there. She looked at me, and I could see it in her face, this flicker of recognition, then confusion, then something that looked almost like fear. I want to tell you I had some big dramatic confrontation planned. I didn't. I'm not that kind of person, honestly. I walked up to her, shook her hand professionally, and said, "Looking forward to working together." That was it. That was the whole moment. But over the next several months, as I settled into the role, I started noticing patterns. Complaints from her team members. Turnover that was higher in her department than anywhere else in the company. HR reports that had been quietly filed over the years, but never fully addressed. I didn't go looking for reasons to get rid of her. I want to be really clear about that, because this isn't a revenge story. Even though I know it might feel like it should be. I simply did my job. I reviewed performance across all my teams fairly, the same way for everyone. And the numbers, the feedback, the pattern of behavior, it all pointed to the same conclusion that upper management eventually had to face too. About a year into my role as director, after multiple documented issues and formal complaints from her own team, the decision was made, together with HR and senior leadership, to let Denise go. I was part of that final meeting, not because I wanted to be there for some kind of satisfaction. I was there because it was my job as director to be there. I remember sitting across the table from her during that meeting. She looked so much smaller than she used to. Not physically, just smaller. The confidence, the sharpness, it was gone. At the very end, as she was gathering her things, she looked at me and said quietly, "I guess I underestimated you." I didn't say anything cruel. I didn't bring up that meeting from years ago. I just said, "I hope things go better for you from here." And I meant it. I really did. I've thought a lot about this whole experience, and I want to share what I actually took away from it, because I think it matters more than the revenge part of the story. The first thing I learned is that people who tear others down are usually dealing with something broken inside themselves. I don't say that to excuse what Denise did to me. What she did was wrong, and it hurt me deeply for years. But understanding that helped me let go of some of the anger I was carrying. Hurt people, genuinely hurt people. The second thing I learned is that one person's opinion of you, even someone with power over your paycheck, is not the truth about who you are. It took me years to actually believe that in my bones, not just repeat it as a nice quote. But it's true. Denise thought I wasn't smart enough. She was wrong. And even if she'd never been proven wrong, even if I'd never gotten that promotion, she still would have been wrong, because none of us get to define another person's worth. The third thing, and this one is important, is that quiet, consistent work beats dramatic confrontation almost every single time. I never yelled at Denise. I never told her off. I never quit in some big, satisfying blaze of glory. I just kept showing up, kept doing good work, kept believing in myself even when it was hard, and eventually, the truth caught up with the lie she had told about me. And the fourth thing, maybe the most important thing, is that asking for help is not weakness. That night with my mom at my kitchen table changed the entire direction of my life. If I had kept everything bottled up, kept pretending I was fine, I honestly don't know where I'd be right now. Probably still stuck. probably still believing I wasn't smart enough. If you've made it this far in the video, I want to talk to you directly for a second. Maybe you have a Denise in your life right now. A boss, a family member, a so-called friend, someone who has looked you in the eye and told you that you're not smart enough, not good enough, not capable enough. I need you to hear something. That's their opinion. It's not a fact carved into stone. People say cruel things for all kinds of reasons. Their own insecurity, their own bad day, their own broken relationship with themselves. It rarely has anything to do with the actual truth about you. You might be wondering, but what if they're right? What if I really am not good enough? I felt that exact fear for years. And I want to tell you, the fact that you're even asking that question, the fact that you care enough to wonder, that already tells me you're someone who takes things seriously, who wants to grow. That's not the profile of someone who isn't good enough. That's the profile of someone who's about to prove everyone wrong. I'm not saying it's easy. It wasn't easy for me. There were nights I cried on my bathroom floor. There were months I barely held myself together. There was a performance improvement plan that made me feel like a failure. There was a version of me that almost believed the story someone else was telling about who I was. But I didn't stay there. And if you're in a hard place right now, I don't need you to believe you'll come out on top today. I just need you to not give up on yourself completely. Just today. Just this one day. That's how I got through it. One day, one small decision, one quiet act of not quitting on myself, at a time. If this story meant something to you, if any part of it felt familiar, I want you to do something for me. Drop a comment and tell me. Has someone ever made you feel small, made you doubt yourself, and what did you do about it? I read every single comment, and honestly, hearing your stories helps me as much as I hope this helped you. And if you're new here, consider subscribing, because this channel is all about real stories, real struggles, and the slow, quiet, unglamorous process of climbing back up when life knocks you down. Because here's the truth I want you to walk away with today. You don't have to become someone's boss to prove them wrong. You just have to keep believing in yourself, even in the moments when nobody else does. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.